Thank you. Good evening and welcome to our reparations on virtual meeting. My name is Kayla Reed. I serve as chair of the Reparations Commission. And we're going to get started. We have 5 commission members present. I'll let you all introduce yourselves. Dr. Ross, you want to go first?
Sure. I'm Dr. Will Ross. I'm vice chair of the commission, and I'm a professor of medicine and of kidney disease at Washington University School of Medicine.
Thank you. Ms. Quinn?
My name is Gwen Moore, and I am a curator at the Missouri Historical Society.
Delisha?
I'm Delisha George, and I serve as a consultant.
And William?
Hello, everyone. I'm William Foster. I serve as a resident of the city.
Great. So we are missing tonight Reverend Kevin Anthony, Professor David Cunningham, and Kimberly Franks. So just first want to give an update on timeline on where we are. So we communicated with the city of St. Louis that our timeline to deliver the final report is as follows. We have today's meeting, which the commission has received a draft, a working draft of the Reparations Commission report. So we're going to have a conversation about that report, the draft report. It is not public, so we are discussing this document that has been sent internally. On the 30th, we are having an in-person meeting at City Hall. It starts at 6 p.m. in the Kennedy Room. At that meeting, we will be presenting the draft recommendations to the public. As promised, over the course of this past, year and a half, we are committed to ensuring that the public is with us through this journey. And so we have at different points in times presented, the sort of shape of the report, the goals of the report to the public to receive feedback. And before we sort of bind and send the final report over to Mayor Jones and release to the public, we are hoping to have a robust conversation on the 30th at City Hall in the Kennedy Room about recommendations, which we will deliver draft recommendations. We have been working to complete the recommendations, our draft of the recommendations, and want to have one meeting where the public is able to engage with those recommendations in sort of a working draft form. We take that feedback, edit the report one final time to respond to and integrate learnings and feedback that we receive from the public that aligns with the goals of the report. And then we'll send the final report over to the mayor's office and the general public on October 5th, which is a Friday. So that has been communicated and approved or affirmed by the mayor's chief of staff. I had a conversation with him today about it. So they are aware of this new timeline. This will be the last adjustment to any timeline for the commission. And the public will have the report available online and in print starting October 5th. Are there any questions from the commission about the update or a timeline?
No, I don't.
Great.
Nope.
So where we are, we sent a 68-page document, which is mostly just text. So again, this is a working draft to the commission yesterday morning. It is in its current form about 68 pages with our most recent updates on the sections that we've been discussing for months now. And so, our hope today is to sort of maybe spend some time discussing section by section with you all to see if there are any remarks or thoughts on the shape. Now, what I want to say to the public that's listening is that this report is absent recommendations. This is just the sort of first mandate of the of Executive Order 75, which says we have to establish, it establishes this commission to assess the history of slavery, segregation, and other race-based harms in the city of St. Louis, explore the present day manifestations of that history. So this report in its form that was sent to the commission really focuses on those two parts. It's sort of the written history that goes from the period of enslavement to present day manifestations, understanding that that could be thousands of pages. What we really have focused on as a decision over the course of time is telling that story. So there's a section on enslavement, and then there are sections that have been organized to talk about segregation and other race-based harms and present day manifestations inside of the report, specifically housing and neighborhood development, public health and education, uh, um, state violence, and the economy and jobs. And so we spend the bulk of our time in those sections. And so today we're just going to have a conversation about the working draft of those first 2 points, knowing that we're going to communicate about the third point, which is recommend a proposal to start repairing the harms on the 30th together at City Hall. So yeah, so send that over. Want to perhaps just like start with any like and Dr. Ross, since you're on the report working group with me, anything that I'm missing about just the overview of how we got to this document?
Oh, yeah, well done.
Okay. And any questions from any commission members about how we got to this point?
No, I don't.
I don't have any at this time.
No.
Great. So if you open the doc, if you have it open, the first 2 pages just really are sort of the working outline of the commission report that talks about the charge, us spending some time in land acknowledgement that hasn't been formally written, defining reparations, the work of the commission, a section on enslavement in St. Louis, the core issues, and then the recommendations. Page 3 really talks about the legacy of racialized harm in St. Louis. It starts with a quote from Rep. Cori Bush that racism is not just slavery and Jim Crow. It is the daily violence that is enacted on our communities each and every day we live in this white supremacist society. And that section holds about 4 or 5 pages. And then there is a section. So I'll stop there. Any questions about that section on sort of defining reparations? The title, the section Legacy of Racialized Harm in St. Louis.
No.
No, I don't have any.
Great. Okay, so then the next section really speaks to the work of the commission. So it talks about creating the St. Louis Reparations Commission. It talks about sort of the policy that is in the words that are in Executive Order 75 on who shall comprise the commission, and it gives an overview of the commission as established in March of 2023. So want to make sure there, because you're named, that is a description that is reflective of what you want listed in the report. If it is not, please just email us a change of what you want that to be under your name, your like short bio.
Sounds good.
Mhm.
The next part really goes into methodology. It sort of speaks to, what the commission is modeled after as far as the United Nations uh, principles, and how we have also thought through including community insight from things like public meetings and sort of expert witnesses and testimony, and sort of the fabric of how we get to the two working groups. And then it goes through a commission timeline, so the meetings that we've held, and a call to community.
And it calls community, we need to fill in that yellow area. Well, provide the last lines in the middle second paragraph. Commission asks that you provide feedback at this link before.
Yeah.
Can you, well, you probably can fill that out.
Yeah, I can fill that out. This section on highlighting perseverance, Dr. Ross, do you want to sort of talk us through that section?
Well, sure. It was actually going back and putting the racial lens on what's happening in St. Louis. And I think, of course, it was important because we are going to be presenting this report as a St. Louis report, while there's a national effort, as we all know, to create a national reparations commission. And so we thought that we should really highlight the reason why it's a St. Louis perspective. And so there are a couple of lines on that about about the racial trauma, the ongoing trauma, and how that really perpetuated the ongoing harm and the need to have this type of response. We decided, because there is an ongoing effort to create a National Reparations Commission, we looked at that, and there was a major focus on cash payments. And we wanted to highlight that while we endorse that type of reparations, we clearly recognize that in St. Louis we're a small municipality, and we don't have the resources to actually provide what is being promoted at the national level. In fact, we reference later on a report by Arthur Bill Doherty's claims that we shouldn't try to do that because it takes away from the national effort. If we're talking about having large sums of money delivered by local and even state government. And so we're just saying why we're doing that. That's not fully, there's some work that needs to be done on that, but that's pretty much what it goes over. Then, okay, so coming about the public comments, here's a thought. We outlined those here, and the question was asked, do we want to take some of these public comments and embed them in the particular topic areas? Housing.
Yeah, I think it could go, I think we could do it either way well, right? Like we could, some testimonies are very focused on an issue area, and some testimonies include sort of a multi-issue frame of impact. And so I think we'd love to hear feedback from, the community engagement group on really thinking about, I think here we've listed about 10 quotes across the hearings that, well, no, each section sort of has quotes organized, and this may be a maximum of 10 in the in the largest section of quotes.
Yeah, I like the idea of the public testimony being put in the sections where they actually talk about those issues. Like I know I've when I was going through the ones that I was doing, they did talk about a lot of things. Housing came up a lot, neighborhoods. But then there were some powerful statements about health. There was some powerful, a lot of people had statements in the ones that I had to look over. I talked about the form that reparations should take. So I guess that would be more of a broader topic than more specific.
Yeah. So I think here's what I'll do. I'll take the liberty of taking those broader topics and separating them, and then doing the embedding of the topics that are where the quotes are specific to the areas.
Yeah, and I think as we move over to design, it would be, you know, like we could have sort of a bubble out, you know, topic, because there's a specific point where I think we have a testimony about neighborhoods and um you know, we spend some real time in the report after getting some comments back from you, Miss Gwen. We've expounded really a section that talks about 3 to 4 distinct neighborhoods now that move from sort of like um Mill Creek to McCree Town to more of a high north neighborhood. I think it's the DeSoto Card neighborhood.
Yeah.
Um, and sort of talk about the levels, like that there are versions of divestment and displacement, right? That there's a sort of divestment that we know is specific to the north side that creates sort of debilitation and deterioration that then forces displacement by lack of infrastructure. Like I can't stay in a house with a collapsed roof, right? And then there's the sort of fueled version of displacement like Mill Creek Valley, where there's a time frame in which all removal occurs for the purpose of X. And so from your comments, we spent some time over the weekend really thinking about how to add that lens into the section. And I think we could use these quotes as sort of like pop outs inside of that part of the section that speaks to like a firsthand account of what that experience was. Yeah, what that experience was. So yeah, so I think we can work. I think Dr. Ross, in draft form, we should just move them maybe as like an end page. And I can also do some work to like identify with the designer where those codes should be embedded in each section.
When you say end page, what do you mean?
Like instead of like not infusing them into the actual text right now, just putting them after the text
After the text. Got
per
it.
section.
Okay. Thank you.
So yeah, so we spend the next few pages. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Kayla. I just want to say, we did see the hand up, but I put a message in the chat that we will invite public comment at the end of the meeting. We have we have attendees who have raised their hand. So just acknowledging that at the end, when we have public comment, we'll capture those.
Great, yeah. Thank you. And my screen disappeared, so I don't know what that means. One second. Here we go. Okay, so yeah, so we spend some from page 12 through about page 16, or page 17, there are quotes that the community engagement working group sent over from testimonies that were provided. So if we all agree, we'll take those by section to sort of in book the section with personal testimony, and in the design report figure out how to situate those quotes throughout the reading, sort of like, you know, pop outs in the report. Any other thoughts about the public quote section?
Mm-mm.
No, I do I like how some of them were specific to the sections, but to Miss Gwen's point and really everybody's point, there were so many comments that spoke to more than just a specific section and were really impactful. So I do like how we will have those throughout the report and we'll capture them because there were some really strong sentiments shared that I wouldn't want us to lose because it didn't hit a specific section. So I
Right,
appreciate that you all are making the space for those as well.
right. So then we get into, on page 18, we start the sectional histories. The first is housing and neighborhoods, and this is a draft as of 3 days ago. It has an introduction, a background. It goes through, some of the history that we know around private restrictions that get, thrown out in cases like Shelley v. Kramer. It really does lean on works that touch, on expertise of folks like you, Miss Gwen, and your presentation on housing, Colin Gordon's work, Walter Johnson's work, Patty Hayda's work. And we really have tried to spend some time moving the conversation from sort of a national thematic reality around housing for Black people out in places like the Midwest, where we know that racial covenants aren't like specific to St. Louis, but to the level that they existed in places like St. Louis, and even sort of the informal practices that take place after the 1948 decision that still reinforce racial segregation. We move into on page 21, doing some conversations around specific neighborhoods, around displacement and dispossession. We talk about Mill Creek, we talk about DeSoto Carr, we talk about the Team 4 plan, we talk about McCreetown, and the really sort of goal of that, knowing that we were not trying to retell history that exists in other places, was to show that displacement wasn't confined to a specific decade. So it wasn't just the 60s or the 70s where this displacement happened, that divestment and the impact of these policies create the current realities that exist in majority Black neighborhoods now throughout St. Louis City. And we really wanted to drive home that, while the federal government certainly is an actor in the larger ecosystem around housing, the specific sort of targeting of neighborhoods is a local set of decision makers, both public and private, who and the impact of that still exists. And so we sort of wrap up in current realities. And there's a section that says looking forward, that we are hoping to, again, we decided a couple meetings ago that all the recommendations will sit together at the end of the report, but the looking forward helps to succinctly name housing discrimination, redlining, policies, divestment decisions, and lead us into a conversation about recommendations. Any questions about that section?
I don't have any questions. I think it was really well done. But I just had one small point on page 19 in that last paragraph, where they say, you talk about local patterns of segregation that confine African American residents to the Ville on the city's north side and a few pockets of residency in St. Louis County. And I know you talk about Mill Creek in the body of your report, but I think Mill Creek should be added to that. since it was the largest African American community, and I think people will see that as why wasn't that there?
And you are in the current reality section.
Yeah, page 19.
Oh, 19, sorry, you did say that. Page
It's like
19.
the background
Okay.
in that last paragraph on page 19. And just a small point, but I think it should be in there. I mean, it
Yeah.
was the largest Black
Yeah,
community.
I think that's easy to just incorporate Mill Creek and saying that, well, yeah, I think that's easy to do.
Yeah, I'm taking notes in another doc to be able to revise that paragraph to include that.
So Kayla, in bottom of page 18, there was a comment about us being consistent in whether using either African American or Black throughout this. So we can ask, is that really necessary to differentiate? Can we just use them interchangeably throughout the report? Should we be more stringent and just only allude to one name, either Black or African American?
That's a good question. I have a lot of personal thoughts on that. I tend to lead toward Black because I think it provides a more like diasporic inclusive framework, but also Black, capital B, is an inherent political sort of thought. I'm open to hear what the rest of the commission thinks about those.
Yeah, that is a question that, in fact, we discussed at the Historical Society. The argument was Black is more inclusive. And I use them interchangeably. But that's in my own writing. But I know some people feel very strongly that it should be used Black. Other people say, well, either way.
Yeah, so I've written state documents and I use both in the same document, back and forward.
I go with Black and Black Americans a lot of times too. But I think for the sake of this document, we should be consistent with one. Which one, I'm not sure, but I feel like it kind of goes back to our conversation of our last meeting of if we were going African descendants or how we were even identifying the who there. So I think it would be helpful to be consistent throughout the document with one.
Yeah, well, based on that vote, that's a good point, Delisha, because based on that conversation, I think then we would need to, it would be Black Americans as the uniform.
Black Americans and not just Black by itself.
Yeah, I'm fine with Black by itself because I maybe the Americans part is like redundant in some senses of the context of the location. Like we are talking about St. Louis, Missouri,
I'm
United
okay
States.
with, yeah, I'm okay with Black.
Okay,
I go with that.
so Blacks it will be.
Okay. Okay. So then the next section, once we sort of get out of the housing and neighborhoods, we are on page 27. This is K through 12 education for Black people in the city of St. Louis, Americans. Dr. Ross, do you want to walk us through that section?
Sure. 1 second, just scrolling up here. So we wanted to start out by really discussing the expansion of geotechnology, plant sciences, and why we would need to have a workforce that actually could participate in that expansion of industry. And that unfortunately, because of the prior history, public education has failed Blacks in St. Louis City. So we decided to go back and look at that history, outline that history, going back to Civil War. And just chronicling some of the rulings that goes back, the Shelley versus Kramer ruling, the Brown versus Board of Education, just highlighting that. And then just really going forward, and I'm being really brief here, going forward on the current realities of American students. We wanted to, after spelling out that history, we were going to actually give some data. So what is the current reality? And so the next three paragraphs really are kind of a summary of that data. And I should put the table here. And on page 29, you'll see a table reflecting graduation rates. This is official contemporary rates from 2016 to 2023. That's showing what's happening with Black graduation rates compared to white rates, all student rates. There's a reduction. It doesn't seem drastic, 68.7 for Blacks compared to 69.4 for all others, but we're just saying that is significant. And going forward, we start to ask, what are the challenges to remediate all of this? Those challenges include actually identifying teachers who have the requisite experience, and we have to just document that. And we just state majority of St. Louis public school students teachers rather, are inexperienced compared to teachers in other Title I schools. Only 7.9% have that appropriate experience. That's pretty stunning. And then we decided to talk about teacher compensation. And we had to be a little clear here because the teachers in St. Louis public schools are actually relatively well compensated compared to the county, which is surprising. However, that doesn't take into account the fact that those teachers have a larger number of students who come in with unique needs, greater demands, and those teachers don't have all the usual tools to educate them, the students. And so we feel that funding should be commensurate with the demands on those teachers. So there are greater demands on the public school teachers, and the funding should reflect that. So the funding formula should reflect that. And so with that, we just concluded that our students are falling behind, have fallen behind. And one of the comments was that our students underperform in both English proficiency and math proficiency compared to white students. And that has persisted for decades. So that's how we conclude the report.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Ross. Any questions about the education section?
Well, again, I just have a small point. Well, first of all, in the history of schooling for African Americans, when when Sumner was first established, it wasn't established in the Ville. That's a small point, but originally it was on 11th Street. It didn't move to the Ville until 1908. So that might confuse people who think it actually.
Yeah, a good point.
Can you speak to what page that is? So I just want to make sure I'm taking notes.
Page 27.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Kayla, for taking notes. It'll help.
And that's the second paragraph, History of Schooling for African Americans in St. Louis City.
So you said it's page 27. And history, okay. And is there a particular paragraph, the
It's,
first
it's,
paragraph?
it's that first paragraph, history of schooling for African Americans in St. Louis City.
Got it.
And it just says, the city in 1875 established Sumner High School in the Ville neighborhood in North City, St. Louis.
Okay. Great.
And the other thing, that Vashon High School was not in Jeff Vanderloo. It was actually in Mill Creek.
Wow.
Is that the same
It's in
paragraph?
it's in the same paragraph, the last sentence.
Additionally, segregated Black schools were open, including Vashon. Is that what you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
And you're saying Vashon was actually in Mill Creek.
Yeah, it was not in Jeff Vanderloo.
Got it. Okay. Any other thoughts or changes to the education section?
No, I think it looks good.
I did have a question. I was just wondering, has there been any research done on the disparity in resources allocated to segregated schools, white schools as opposed to Black schools? I don't know. I was just interested to know if there was.
Like
Uh,
recent or like
During this period, doing this historically. Well, I know historically there were disparities. I just wondered if anybody done any research on it. That's not my area, so I
Yeah.
really don't know.
I was surmised so, but I didn't get any data on that.
okay, I'll leave that just as a question around disparities between resource allocation and you know, and school closure, right? Like that's sort of the
Mhm.
big allocation is
Yeah.
that there have been like more school closures in obviously Black neighborhoods. Okay. The next section is public health. Also you, Dr. Ross.
Sure.
Want to walk us through the top lines?
Okay, just a couple high points. We wanted to start out really introducing some terms. The fact that we have individuals who are living in traumatized conditions, and we have to understand that some of the major barriers to providing those health structural determinants of health haven't been fully addressed. And so we wanted to make sure that people were aware of that term and really explain that well. We then delved into some of the actual disparities, looking at the fact that poverty impacts health, and relating that to the data that we know about the difference in life expectancy from St. Louis City to Clayton, and then just providing some other data on going through death rates for or high mortality death rates, high infant death rates, and how those all related to these social terms of health. We then went into the history of healthcare, and we started talking about the first city, actually not the first, but the first large city hospital opened in 1906, and why that was suboptimal for Blacks because it was a segregated facility. Black patients toward the back and their African-American physicians weren't extended privileges. And then we talked about how that led to Homer G. Phillips Hospital in the Ville, and I go over that history. We didn't go into too much detail because that history is well known. And then we tried to get into contemporary work with the Regional Health Commission, which tried to work to address some of those problems with integrated care. And so, so that led into a discussion about access to care, how we're trying to do some joint work with the city and the county to address those, but it's underfunded. We provide data and charts showing some of the disparities that are highlighted. And we then wanted to say, okay, well, what do we do now with knowing that knowledge? And so we decided to look at some of the ongoing efforts and ask, are those efforts are they the appropriate responses? Are they suboptimal? And what kind of resources do we need to make sure those efforts are sustained? And so we concluded with a reference to the new dean of the dean of the School of Public Health. I'm sorry, School of Public Health at Washington University. I said it right. Sandro Galea, who said that reparations are a public health priority. That was a powerful statement. And he's one of the most widely known public health scholars, perhaps in the world. And so we decided to really he has like 1,000 publications, or something like that, like 15 books. So we decided to use that and then end with a graphic showing public health funding, how we're so poor. We actually rank quite low. And so that's that report.
Great, thank you, Dr. Ross. Any questions about public health or thoughts, changes?
Well, I do have, I keep bringing up the history, but that's my thing. So that's
important.
okay.
Just give us the page numbers, but we're on the
Okay,
same.
on page 37, where you're talking about City Hospital, #1, First City Hospital, 1906. But there was a City Hospital #2 that was opened in 1919.
Yes.
I think it's significant because, and this came from pressure from the Black community. It was a horrific hospital, but I think it should be mentioned.
Yeah, it should be mentioned because it was such a horrific hospital.
Yeah,
one of the reasons why there was a move to create
G. Phillips, exactly.
So yes, that hospital should be mentioned. Kayla, you're getting that note?
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is that there was People's Hospital too. That was a Black-run hospital.
Say it again. What's the name of it? Say it again.
People's Hospital.
#2?
No, that was it was a private, kind of a private hospital.
It was a small hospital. It was a rather small hospital compared to the City Hospital #1 and G. Phillips.
Yeah.
And that's why I didn't bring that in. I mean, I know about it, but I didn't bring that in. I think we probably can be accurate and include that also.
And I think the last thing I would mention was that St. Mary's, which was a hospital for Blacks that was open for Blacks after they built Furman Deloge, when it became all white, they decided to make St. Mary's a hospital for Black people.
Okay. Yeah, I think you're right. All three should be included.
Okay, People's Hospital, and then when did that open, Ms. Gwen?
1894.
1894, and then St. Mary's?
1933.
1933. Okay. And what's the hospital that became an all-white hospital?
Oh, that was Furman Deloge.
Spell that.
Yeah.
I was about to ask the same thing, but did you say that one was open first and then became St. Mary's?
No, when they when they opened Furman Deloge, they decided that Furman Deloge was going to be a white hospital, so therefore St. Mary's could be a Black hospital.
Okay, two separate. Got you. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I did not, okay. Had to look that one up.
Is it DESLOGE?
Yeah, DELOUGE.
LODGE. DESLODGE, Furman Deloge.
There's no D in it.
Per
internet.
Oh, no D, okay.
DESLOGE.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Great, thank you. Anything else in that section?
No, that'll be enough.
Okay, so just want to capture that I heard I typed house, Lord. Hospital, number one opened in 1906. City Hospital number two opened in 1919, which came from pressure from Black residents. The conditions of City Hospital number two actually spurred the call to open Homer G. Phillips. There was also People's Hospital that opened in 1894. It was small and semi-private. St.
It was,
Mary,
it was private,
okay, small and private, opened in
but they
1890.
accepted charity patients, I should say.
Okay. And then St. Mary's, not the one in Clayton, the
Oh,
first
no,
St.
no,
Mary's,
no, this was up Papan.
opened in 1933,
Mhm.
became a hospital for Black residents after Furman Deloge Hospital became an all-white hospital.
Yeah, once it was completed, yeah.
Okay, great. Note,
You
note.
can fact check that though.
You
I
are
think,
my fact check, Ms. Gwen, but we
because I think Furman Deloge would probably say they did not have just white residents, white patients, but.
got you. I see what you're saying. Well, yeah. I don't think they exist anymore, right? So do they, yeah, it's not a present. Is it a present? No, it's not present. It
No,
becomes
it's where SLU is now.
St. Louis University Hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Got you. Okay. So the next section, I will try to do justice for Professor Cunningham, who is not here. The next section is jobs and economy, page 45, historical legacies and pathways to equity. It starts off with the historical legacies of exclusion and exploitation, talks about the Great Depression and the impact that that has on Black workers inside of the city of St. Louis and the sorts of jobs that remain available, including like laundries, beauty salons, and domestic work. Talks about how neighborhood segregation fueled job segregation and outright exclusion. It talks about the role of organized labor. So, Black people finding some pathways to career and work through unions and more protections on the job through unions compared to non-union jobs. And that, by the 1970s, no group was more overrepresented in labor unions than Black workers. And the increase in Black women entering the private sector unionization. So it spends some time talking about that. It also talks about sort of at the swell of the moment that unions like the Teamsters and other unions are becoming, the sort of hopeful landing place for Black workers. We actually are starting to see a decline in manufacturing jobs, several closures of factories, and the impact of suburbanization on inner city job opportunities. It goes on, to really talk about sort of economic inequality policies that produced economic disadvantages for poor and working class people, and how jobs were replaced with like lower paying jobs. It talks then it sort of moves into like where to go from here. Spends a couple pages discussing policy shifts, opportunities, things like that. Just as an overview, and it ends on page 52. Any thoughts, responses, reactions to that page? I mean, that section, sorry.
What about the comment on page 50 about cutting that paragraph? Somebody made I don't know who made the comment about either condensing this paragraph or cutting it out altogether.
Yeah, I would cut it all together. It's much more of a large macro economic argument, and I think that it's much larger than what we're trying to do here. So I would argue for cutting that.
I'm not in the Word form of the document, so what paragraph, what does it start with?
It's page 49 says the U.S. economy was also becoming more global as U.S. leaders began furthering the agenda of greater global health liberalization, global trade liberalization, sorry. So yeah, I mean, I just don't think it's gonna pertain to what we're doing with a local perspective.
Got it. Okay, and we said that that's page 49. Got it. Anything else on jobs and economy?
I just have a general question on some of the sections. They have the people that worked on this, on that particular section, and some of them they don't. When the final document is presented, will each section have that?
No,
They won't, okay.
no, it'll just be a contributor section at the end.
Oh, okay.
I think they're just doing that to sort of own sections. And we didn't do a lot, since there are sort of 5 teams working on these reports, we just combined the docs that we got from each of them. We didn't do some scrubbing. That'll happen in sort of the next round of edits.
Okay.
Right. Okay, then the next section is about policing and state violence. It talks about the relationship and tensions and abuses, track patterns of abuse that really take place between like police in its journey of being militarized and Black neighborhoods. It also talks about lynchings that have occurred in the region. And it sort of breaks down such like police violence by sort of eras. So thinking about historical police violence from the 60s through the 80s, and then contemporary police violence with some analysis on race and economic disadvantage using some maps that we have seen in the presentation that Professor Cunningham gave at the Carondelet Library. It also has a section on courts and jails in St. Louis, and the impact of the 2 jails, which we got news around today, that one of them is in the process of, will start a process of demolition. But, the workhouse along Hall Street, the Justice Center, the impact of sort of litigation, and some of the patterns and practices of abuse and neglect, exploitation inside of these facilities in the city of St. Louis. It has a broader impact on state violence section. And then a section that talks about informing recommendations and what reparative justice looks like. And how to think about the drivers of racialized violence and how to think about redress for harms around what's presented in the section. And it concludes on page 64, but also includes a suggested resources section, which I think we need to figure out how to create uniform, because in some sections we have citations, and in some sections like this, it says suggested resources or a version of both. And we did talk about on the online version of the report having sort of a like clickable resource for people to do further reading around the sort of summations that the report provides. But outside of that, any questions around the last section?
No. Comprehensive, very.
No, no questions. I think it aligns with his earlier presentation that he uh, presented to everyone and just expounded a little bit more on that. So no problems with me.
I appreciate it that this section especially gives examples of reparative justice effort. I think that that's really helpful to have that information included as we are preparing ours. But and also to the point of the resources section, I definitely would like for us to make sure we have that and expand upon it based on what we have in there and other um, links as well that can be added to that.
Right. Okay. Ms. Gwen, anything you want us to note?
You know, I think it's well done.
Okay, well, that takes us through the report as it is situated. So obviously we have some scrubbing to do, some formatting to do to create consistencies, making sure that everyone's using the same citation method, and some cleaner page breaks and things like that. We're going to make some changes about the public comments. And so, sorry, it's a work call. Sorry, y'all. Yeah, and so want to just see if there are any other things that folks noted that we need to think about as we move to sort of a second version of a draft, a more polished version of this draft, to start moving over to the design.
Recommendations.
Yeah, and the recommendations and the designers.
So regarding recommendations, we had a discussion earlier, almost last year. We could take some of the recommendations that are conveyed in the topic sections themselves, or we could just kind of be more broad about recommendations. And so, I don't know if we want to just simply just sit together and say, here's what we want to do, or we just can just actually have a framework, start with at least a template of the recommendations based on what reports produced.
Yeah, so I sent an email to the commission. Again, we want as much as possible for the report working group to not be the entity inside the commission that is drafting the recommendations. Now, we've had the report sort of over in that working group. So, understanding that, you know, folks have only had the sort of full draft for a couple of days. I do think, what the report working group is asking for in sort of a quick turnaround is sort of recommendations that we want to be included in the presentation to the public on the 30th. And I think we could go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'll let you finish.
I was just gonna put a date on it. Actually, that I think it would be really great. We typically meet on Wednesdays. I don't know if we've made a meeting for next week. Well, Wednesday would be the best day for me to do it, but for the report working group. But if we could get recommendations by end of day on the 24th, like if we could wake up to emails from you all with your recommendations that just would be helpful to us, or we'll be sort of in a conversation where the report working group is anchoring the recommendations, which isn't really the mandate. We sort of were charged with the part that we've presented tonight. Does that feel reasonable to everyone?
That was what I was about to ask, if you could give a date. So you were reading my mind.
Great.
Yeah, I think that's feasible.
So this is a short timetable. You talk about the 24th. And we have a few people who aren't here. So will we be able to actually come up with those recommendations in that time period?
But Dr. Ross, the last meeting we had, we also talked about it
Yeah,
in terms of thinking. We've been talking about thinking through recommendations. I'm not a part of you all's report working team, and I understand you'd want to have enough time, but I think most of us have probably been thinking about recommendations. So it's not a first ask.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's just a hard deadline. I'll communicate in an email to the full commission with that deadline. And then I think we spend the 25th, Dr. Ross, if that works for our schedules, which I'll also separately email about, to take all those recommendations, combine them into a single doc, start to sort of organize them, and then send those back out. We'll like try to turn that around really quickly into a single doc to send back out to the full commission for everyone to see. And we'll have to do some email dancing around that. But also, we'll be sort of in a hard moment of scrubbing and formatting and integrating the comments that we received on tonight's call inside the report part, not the recommendation part. But that feels doable to me. It's just really important that we get that communication from every member of the commission.
So 6 o'clock on the Wednesday, the 25th.
That works for me. That works for you?
Works for me also.
Great. I'll put it on there and check in with David. Great. Any other thoughts or questions about the report? And if not, then we'll open it up to public comment.
I just want to say, well done.
What's that song? It's been a long time coming. It's been a long time coming. And again, I know we keep saying the report working group is Dr. Ross, Professor Cunningham, and myself. And Dr. Ross and David especially are contributors in written form to some of their sections. But there is a host of contributors that we owe a huge thank you to, who have spent their summer really getting us to this point. And so really grateful to those folks who have spent time lending their expertise to help shape these narratives. Any other thoughts? Thank you, Ms. Gwen, for that affirmation. We talk weekly. We're gonna miss each other in a couple weeks because we're so used to talking weekly.
No, we won't.
Well, I mean the report working group. If there are no other thoughts, if there are public comments, please raise your hand and we will add you to the call to hear from you. Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna add this one. Okay. Immortal, it looks like you should be able to speak if you unmute.
Thank you and greetings. So this is Antoine, and I hail from the Hamilton Heights community in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm kind of disheartened by some of the things I've heard tonight. So I implore you all not to take this personally, but please do take it to heart. Please do take it to heart. I heard about cash payments and about how the city is a small municipality relatively. And, the idea or the notion is that the city doesn't have what it takes to give cash payments to Black Americans who are descendant from those who were enslaved in this country. So to that, I just want to mention that, let me pull it up here, the city's budget. The city's total budget was $799,704 and let's say 800 million, because if I get going through all these numbers, I'm gonna get tongue tied. $800 million, of which $668 million has been expended. So that leaves about 130 some odd $million that hasn't been expended yet. I can also point out to you where is it at? Let me get it up here for you, because we got to get a handle on this. I'm looking at Axios right now, and I see where what other cities are doing for people who are not Black Americans, people who are not Americans. I'm looking at cities spending hundreds of millions of dollars to undergird the poor, people coming from other nations. See, 150 million allocated in Chicago for people who are moving into the country. New York, $4.2 billion for new arrivals to America. And I could go on. I won't waste time going on and on. Every sanctuary city has its story. So hundreds of millions of dollars, in some cases billions of dollars, being spent with no studies, no nothing. So so much for the argument of the city can't pay. They can. And that doesn't include, the last thing I want to say about the money the city has, the numbers I just mentioned does not include, what doesn't include. Let me get back to it. I'm sorry, y'all bear with me. I ain't gonna take up much of your time.
No, you're fine. While you're looking that up, I wanted to clarify a couple things. So one, the remark that you're mentioning that Dr. Ross said earlier was citing a book on reparations, Bill Darity's book. Is that right? Is that his name, Dr. Ross?
Yes.
I'm
About
familiar
cash
with him.
payments. And in our last meeting, we actually discussed and voted that one of the recommendations would be cash payments. And so
Yay.
the section that we were discussing was to sort of explain that the sum that even we recommend would not be the total amount that Black folks in St. Louis would need to be awarded by virtue of the many levers of government and institutions that have impacted our lived realities. So just wanted to clarify that we actually had a robust conversation on our last if somebody can remind me of the date so we can direct them to that recording, but we actually spent a lot of time discussing lineage and cash payments as something that the report working group needed to be able to have consensus from the larger commission to write through explaining what we called conditions, like the conditions of satisfaction to qualify. And so one of those was like lineage. We had a whole conversation about the impact of like who would be included as far as geography is concerned, whether or not it was just for people who still live in St. Louis, because many of us know that there are lots of folks who like maybe were your neighbors and now live in like Bellefonte neighbors, right? Would they be able to participate in the conversation around cash payments, and landed on that one of our recommendations does affirm cash payments and actually sets out a process to create a panel that gets us to a number as one of the recommendations that has already been discussed inside of the commission. So just wanted to clarify that we have discussed cash payments. That is going to be in the final report. What we're trying to notate is that this conversation locally should not detract from the need for a robust federal reparations package to Black people in this country.
And that
Well,
was our August 14th, 2024 planning meeting,
Great.
virtual
okay.
meeting.
Well, I
Antoine,
commend you.
can I ask your last name? Do you mind giving your last name?
I do,
Okay, no problem.
but that's
Thank
okay.
you.
So in that case, I commend you on that because we really needed that type of language in there, and I commend you on that. Now, the only other thing which is a concern is the. Well, let me give you some information. Black American in the coming generations. I'm 51. So now I'm talking about my grandkids. I'm not even talking about my kids. I'm talking about my grandkids. They're only going to, when they say Black American, they're only going to be talking about Black people in the United States who can trace their lineage all the way back to the time of slavery, right here in the United States. That's all they're going to mean by that. And if you're not that, then that means where are you from? You're a Haitian American. You're a Kenyan American. We venerate these cultures. We've always looked up to these cultures. When I was growing up under the Pan-African flags, so I think that we deserve, as Black Americans, just like every culture in the diaspora deserves respect for their culture and to be and to have their own way of calling themselves. I don't think we should be a generic version of everybody Black in the world. Some words, some moniker has to come out for us to denote specifically us. So that's that on that. And the last thing I wanted to say is I'm concerned in all these reparations commissions about being diasporic inclusive. Look, nobody has done more for the melanated diaspora around the world than Black Americans right here in this country. We've done so many things. It's too much to recount right here in this space. Nobody's done more for the world to fight the system of white supremacy than those of us right here in the United States. So when you say in the context of a reparations proposals, you want it to be diasporic inclusive, I would just point you over to CARICOM. I'll point you to CARICOM and I'll let you know that the member states of CARICOM are Argentina and Barbuda. I can't even pronounce it. Bahamas, Barbados, Belize, Dominica, Grenada, Guyana, Haiti, Jamaica, Montserrat, St. Lucia's, St. Kitts and Nevis, the St. Vincent, Suriname, Trinidad and Tobago. These are the member countries. They didn't say the United States. So whatever comes from CARICOM, that's going to go rightfully so. Nobody, you see, Black Americans, we're not angry about that. We don't mind. We have love and respect for those people, and we have love and respect for their cultures. And I think it's about time that we get that kind of love and respect in reciprocation. So while we're not upset about CARICOM, and we have offered support to the people of CARICOM to get their reparations from the nations who enslaved their ancestors. And so here we are in the United States. We want redress from the ones who enslaved our ancestors. Most of the melanated diaspora, I'll end it with this, sir. Most of the melanated diaspora didn't get here till after year 2000. So what are we talking about? So we have to focus in on who's been harmed.
We understand that, and that's been the perspective of us writing the report. So there's no disagreement with that. So thank you for that.
Well, that's all I had to say. I appreciate y'all's work. Really proud of y'all for including the things that you've mentioned, and looking forward to seeing y'all on the 30th.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
I don't see any. Oh, okay. We have one more. Mr. Gallagher, you'll need to unmute.
And let's adhere to the same 3-minute time frame we gave people in past forums.
Mr. Gallagher? You can go ahead and speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can?
You're low. You are low.
No?
Like maybe come closer to the microphone if possible.
Turn my volume up. Can you hear me okay now?
We can hear you better. We'll listen closely. Go ahead.
As far as the monetary monies that the gentleman was speaking of, I just have one question. Is any of that $780,000 from the RAM monies that the Rams money that's sitting? Wow.
So I think your question is can any of the Rams money be allocated to this conversation around reparations? Is that right?
My question is in terms of the monetary money that is available, and I was just wondering if the $780 million that's sitting drawing interest and has drawn interest over a year from the Ram settlement, was that involved in the reparations and adjustment for the people in Missouri, city of Missouri?
Great. Yeah, thank you for that question. The short answer is no. The long answer is, but we don't know what will happen with that pot of resources. And so it hasn't been allocated yet. And as a commission, we don't have the power or authority to dictate or we can make a recommendation on sources of funding that could contribute to the recommendation around direct payment. And but that ultimately lies with room 200 with the mayor and the board of aldermen on deciding how to materialize that recommendation into policy and process. But thank you for that question, Mr. Gallagher. Any other public comments this evening? Okay. Any closing comments from any members of the commission ahead of our meeting on the 30th?
No.
If there are other things that we want, I'm gonna go back through the document that you sent. If we have any other comments, should we just send them to you, Taylor? Or the whole
Send
commission?
them to all three of us, that would be great.
Okay,
It's moving at different, like we have different schedules. So if we all get it, then it'll get got for sure.
okay.
Great question. Any other questions or comments from commissioners present tonight?
I don't have any. Thank you all for the composition of the report.
Okay.
You're
Well,
welcome.
with that, go ahead, Dr. Ross, I'm sorry.
Thank you for the feedback, everyone.
Yeah, that was super great. I put it in the doc and I'll send it over to you, Dr. Ross and David, so we can discuss next week. Okay, as a reminder, the meeting on September 30th is in person at City Hall in the Kennedy Room on the second floor. And so it starts at 6, correct, Delisha?
Correct.
So it starts at 6 p.m. We are going to make sure we are all on time for that. It is the last meeting to give any feedback to the report. We will take the feedback tonight given by our speakers and commission members and incorporate changes as needed. And then after the 30th, we are going to spend a week in a room together finalizing this report to deliver to Mayor Jones and to the public. And so it'll be accessible for download, and we're going to try really hard through some resources we've been able to obtain through a private
You just muted yourself, Kayla. Kayla,
Kayla,
you
we
muted
can't hear
yourself.
you. Something must have gone out on her screen or something.
You're muted,
Kayla.
She's
Kayla.
muted. She's muted.
Yeah, someone muted me. Sorry. I don't know where I got muted. But if you have any comments between now and the 30th, please email.
Your is your volume's going out.
Can she hear us?
Kayla, I don't think she can. Something's going out.
Yeah, I don't think she can hear us.
Yeah.
Yeah, your volume's going out.
I don't think we have anything more to say.
Yeah. I think she thinks we can hear her. It sounds like for the most part, comments will be accepted on the 30th, and we will reconvene on the
bye,
30th.
everybody.
Dr. Ross, can you close us out? Can you officially close us out?
Oh, sure. Thank you. So we're closing the this session of the Reparations Commission. Is there a motion to close?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. So we are formally closed.
Thank
This-
you.
Good night,
Thank you.
everybody.